Hello, everyone. We're back for the final market week in the month of August. I am Bosin Amafaye, and this is your Money Moves Monday.
And I am Melissa Enoch, live here at the FMDQ in Lagos. I hope you all had a great weekend.
I had a very great weekend. Melissa. Let's get the new week started. Let's start in South Africa, where the Financial Conduct Authority says it's putting together a new set of rules to guide operations of the over-the-counter derivatives market. The new set of rules require certain products to be cleared through a central counterparty in order to boost transparency and reduce systemic risk. The FSCA Commissioner Unathi Kamlana says the products under review include interest rate and foreign exchange swaps, as well as repo agreements and forwards. The watchdog also plans to strengthen capital requirements for non-bank OTC derivatives providers in South Africa. Now let's move on to other parts of that region in Southern Africa. Namibia's regional Ongwediva annual trade fair kicked off at the weekend. Now the international fair was designed to promote trade and business linkages, especially for local market entrepreneurs and small and medium enterprises. Let's take excerpts from that event.
This trade fair facilitates opportunities for business across regions, sector and countries to showcase their innovation, connect with the market, and explore partnership. I am informed that this year's exhibitor represents a wide range of sectors, from energy, fisheries, health, finance, and art and craft, among others. I'm particularly pleased to note that aviation and digital innovation are also represented for the first time, an indication that the Ongwediva Trade Fair is keeping pace with emerging trends and future demands. This trade fair contributes to the economic growth, transformation, and resilience pillars of our sixth National Development Plan, particularly on youth employment, local value addition, and digital transformation. In addition, the trade fair links business and market and supports the growth of the small and medium enterprises, particularly those led by women and youth. This trade fair...
Okay, that's the president of Namibia declaring open that trade fair at the weekend. Now let's get over to Melissa, the FMDQ archives room here for more on today's news. Hi there, Melissa.
Hello there, Bossing, and thank you very much. In energy news this Monday, Africa will need over $400 billion in refining investments by the year 2030 in order to meet its mid-decade objectives, and that's according to OPEC. The continent is set to add 1.2 million barrels per day of new refining capacity by 2030, making one of the fastest downstream expansions globally, the OPEC says in its newly released World Oil Outlook. The medium-term growth, led by landmark projects such as the Dangote refinery in Nigeria, Angola, and Uganda, signals turning points for the continent's energy sovereignty and investment attractiveness. In Kenya, President Ruto's government is projecting a 3.32 trillion shillings in revenue for the country's 2025 and 2026 fiscal year, making 17.2% of the expected GDP. Ordinary revenue was forecast at 2.75 trillion shillings, or 14.3% of the GDP. In terms of expenditure, Kenya is looking to spend 4.27 trillion shillings, or 22.2% of the GDP, leaving a fiscal deficit of 901 billion shillings, or 4.7% of the gross domestic product. Inflation is expected to be maintained within the target range of 5%, and plus or minus 2.5%. Exchange rate is seen stable over the medium term to support lending and economic activities. In other news now, the Asian International Infrastructure Investment Bank, or AIIB, plans to support Morocco's climate change resilience via a $200 million loan facility. The financing package will target priority projects that are designed to reinforce environmental and water infrastructure and improve the resilience of economic sectors most exposed to climate risks. The AIIB loan is part of a co-financing program with the World Bank, which has already committed $350 million through its results-based financing mechanism. Finally, in Egypt, the International Construction Company of Egypt has signed a medium-term financing agreement worth 4.8 billion Egyptian pounds with the SAIB Bank. The agreement was signed to fund the Taj Tower project located in Egypt's new administrative capital. The executives of the SAIB Bank says the financing aligns with the ongoing efforts to support and develop significant real estate projects in Egypt, which are vital for driving economic growth, creating jobs, and stimulating industries linked to real estate development. I am Melissa Enoch, and that's it on News Now. We have Bosun standing by at the ticker tape room for our markets round just after the break. Stick around.
All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is your Money Moves Monday here from the ticker tape room of the FMDQ. Let's start the trading day of the week looking at the equities side. Markets look a little bit positive. The frontier African markets taking their cue from last Friday's Jackson Hole speech by U.S. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell that there's a pathway that could lead to a rate cut by the FOMC next month, September, the most crucial month for central banks anywhere in the world in terms of interest rate decision. So that's what is getting the markets a little bit on the upside. So when you look at the ticker you see right there on the screen, you can see that the dashboard gives you a couple of positive reading for the start of the new week, of course, tentatively taking you to the end of August, which is the second month in the third quarter. The GSE, the biggest exchange on the continent, on the equity side, that is, moved up 0.42% today as the US dollar decelerated slightly across a few across the major other pairs in that basket. The NGX, that's the Nigerian exchange, was 141,433. The local index here is about 0.31% in the green. Start to claw back some gains after those steepy losses or declines of profit booking that we saw over about a week or so. In Nairobi, the biggest exchange in East Africa, was better today by 0.25%. There's still a number of earnings coming out of the Kenyan stock market. The government also announced over the weekend the fiscal budget for 2025-2026. Kenya will be running about 4.7% deficit on its spending for the next 2 years. That's what President Ruto's Ministry of Finance presented over the weekend. You can read up the details online. In the meantime, the Egyptian market started flattish with the rest of the North African and the Middle Eastern market Monday. Zimbabwe, as you can see at the bottom right of your screen, that's 0.29% positive for the biggest exchange in that country, 205.74 on the main index. Let me take that to the government treasuries. And of course, you see a bit of a deceleration in the price of the US dollar. Some positive news around the government paper, the US 10-year benchmark paper, price at 9.565%, around 1307 GMT Monday. That's down by 0.78%. The Kenyan 10-year paper even moved much better, 1.01%. 13.393 for Nigeria's 10-year paper. That's 15.681% according to investing.com. That's a flattish Friday when we finished off on that. Let me take you to the currencies, and we're talking about the behavior of the performance of the US dollar so far since we started. Today is about 4:04 Nigerian time as we live here to you on the show. The South African rand trading around 17.56, down 0.65 on the US dollar. The dollar's also down about 0.2 for a 0.25% on the Nigerian currency. That's 1,531.36 to start the new week. The CFA franc in West Africa, for the 8 countries in West Africa using the FCFA, that's 560.88. That's about 0.86% on the US dollar. Now let's top into commodities, because again, you've seen in the news those attacks, consistent attacks on Russian oil refineries by Ukrainian drones. That's bringing sentiment back into the market that the peace deal been worked upon between Russia and the Ukraine is not coming anytime soon. So investors begin to price oil benchmarks much higher, and that took the London Brent by 0.62% to start the new week, and the US WTI better by 0.72%, $64.12, 68.15 for the London Brent. Of course, that is what a number of African countries benchmark their budget on, for example, for Nigeria. So the war in Ukraine is a major concern right now. We're also on the lookout, however, as we go towards the end of August, how the unwinding of the total supply by OPEC will play into the month of September. The winter season is going to start around the northern hemisphere. What that would mean for oil prices is anyone's guess. We're expecting oil prices to begin to move up because there will be further demand because of the season that is just coming around the corner. Let me take that to the metal prices. Again, you see a bit of a deceleration in the dollar. Gold safe haven status down by 0.25%, around 12.56 GMT Monday, $3,410 an ounce. Aluminum's trading much lower, 1.29%. Two of the CEOs of the biggest copper companies in the world met with President Trump last week. They're also trying to decide and to weigh on the Mr. President to reverse or at least reduce the 50% tariff that he's placed on copper imports into the United States. So everyone is talking about trade and tariff as we speak. Copper prices $4.48 today, up 0.61%, 12.56 GMT. Let's finish on the soft commodity side. Cocoa prices up by 0.39%, but are still below the 8,000 where we were a bit high, further elevated on Monday, Tuesday, early last week, 7,811. But let me finish off around palm oil because the Malaysian ringgit, the local currency, has been firming up, and that's pushing the price of for palm oil, push that up by 0.43%, 1,057. Of course, it depends on where you're looking at the price of palm oil vis-a-vis soya oil, which was very strong last week, and that put some pressure on the price of palm oil at the spot market. Today, we're looking at this price about this time, $12.59, $1,057. That looks like the new level that palm oil has crossed into and is holding on that level because, again, demand and supply that are coming from some of the biggest exporters in the world, Malaysia and India as well. These two countries are also two of the biggest consumers of both soya oil and palm oil anywhere on planet Earth. If you want to think about what's in the price of coffee, that's $1.16. That's no good news for those who are importing coffee, $382.70. That's what the market is doing today. So the figure staying around 300 for most of last week, again, because of concerns out of Brazil and out of Indonesia, where you got the Robusta coffee and the Arabica coffee. Then you've got a few other producers from Africa, such as Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda as well. And of course, a few other producers in West Africa. And that's about it for today on Your Money Moves. I am Boston Omofai. From me and the rest of the team here at the FMDQ studios. We say thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow as we begin to count down the final trading days of the month of August. Bye for now. Have a great day.